Hello, everybody. Welcome to It Was Tuesday with your host, James Chen, aka Jay Chenzor. I just came back from Portland, Oregon, where we had the Classic Tetris World Championships, where I did commentary for that, and it was a very exhausting weekend. Not because of the event necessarily, but because of my own insomnia. But we are here ready to go back for some more fighting game content. But in case, look, I just got to talk about the CTWC stuff for just a little bit. What's up? What is that, Guedalon? Welcome to the chat, catching the show live for the first time. But basically want to talk a little bit about CTWC. Of course, that is Classic Tetris World Championships, where we play NES Tetris. NES Tetris just like actually on the NES Tetris in Portland at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. And it's been going on for quite some time now. I've been involved with the commentary since about 2017, where they were looking for new Tetris commentators, and I decided to audition, and they're like, "Whoa, what the heck?" and found out that Tetris is basically my favorite game of all time. So, Shay asks in the chat, why is it that specific version being played competitively? Because it is by far the most difficult version of Tetris one of the most difficult versions of Tetris. So all the different versions of Tetris, whether it's Tetris NES, Tetris the Grandmaster, Puyo Puyo Tetris, or Tetris 99, all versions of Tetris play very, very differently. So while most people will look at them and be like, they're the same game, that's like saying every Street Fighter is exactly the same, like Third Strike and Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 6 are clearly the same game. Yeah, and Tetris Effect, exactly. But that is simply just not the case. Every Tetris version is vastly different from each other, and the skills required to survive in NES Tetris are by far the hardest in a version of Tetris that is still also competitively playable, because obviously there are other versions of Tetris that are very difficult to be good at, but that's also because their controls are bad or their RNG is completely just whack, etc., etc. Kitaru is here. So Kitaru, by the way, who won a Lifetime Achievement Award at CTWC. He's basically the walking Tetris encyclopedia. So shout outs to Kitaru, aka Alex Kerr. Basically one of the most knowledgeable people in the Tetris world that there is. But yeah, a lot of them don't have the same survival score challenge aspect, right? So I've often said to people who don't understand, on Tetris DS, for example, if I played marathon mode, I literally can survive forever. And in fact, anybody who has any form of Tetris talent who is anywhere worth their salt can survive forever on Tetris DS. You will literally never top out. And that just wasn't the case for NES Tetris until literally last year, and which is why a rule had to be changed for this year at CTWC, introducing the super kill screen by actually hacking the ROM a little bit for that. So are Tetris people good at Super Puzzle Fighter? Not necessarily. Tetris is a very unique puzzle game. A lot of other puzzle games, such as Puyo Puyo, such as Puzzle Fighter, etc., are less about this kind of Zen mindset and more of like this constant, like absolute planning. Tetris is more about reaction and just kind of flow and maintenance. For stuff like Puzzle Fighter, you're trying to build chains, etc. Very, very different kind of mindsets, basically. So they're very, very different styles. For example, I love Tetris. I'm very good at Tetris. I am ass at Puyo Puyo. I am not very good at Super Puzzle Fighter either. They take very, very different mindsets to play. Yeah. They definitely run some puzzle. I mean, honestly, I feel like we should start, well, this is a conversation for another time, but like, I feel like CTWC should even start just like having main events with a bunch of other puzzle games, kind of maybe try to turn into an Evo for puzzle games. I think would be pretty sick. But the thing about it is, Tetris, what's interesting is that NES Tetris, since 2017, when I first started getting into commentary, really kind of went into a renaissance when Joseph, a young kid who really was super good at hypertapping, ended up beating the 7-time world champion Jonas, who was basically the best player, the best DAS player of all time. I'll explain these terms in a second. Joseph then kind of brought in a whole new school of players because he was so young, and a bunch of other young players were like, hey, maybe I can get into this. And then thanks to a player named Cheese, they discovered an even newer tech called rolling. And what rolling did was really just kind of bust the door open. So before, NES Tetris is played in such a way, and the game is designed in such a way that once it got to certain speeds, it was really, really hard to survive. And in fact, for DAS players, it was almost impossible to survive because it was just too fast, and the technique they used literally just couldn't survive once it got to level 29s. Thus, it was called the kill screen. Once the advent of the hypertappers came in, and there were hypertappers before, such as Corian from Japan, but Joseph was the greatest hypertapper to show up and was able to take down Jonas and win 2 years back to back. And he kind of ushered in a whole new era. And then now, interestingly enough, a new technique has been discovered called rolling, which has really changed the face of classic Tetris again. And now all of a sudden, all the players have to learn rolling, and hyper tapping has almost become irrelevant. And Shay, the 1 year Alexei Pajitnov actually visited the CTWC, he actually watched it and said that he did not believe Tetris could be played like that with only one preview piece, with the instant, sticking of the pieces as soon as they touch down, etc., etc. And he said, I was proven wrong, and now I see that Tetris has the potential to be the greatest esport in the world. So very, very cool. So even Alexei Pajitnov's eyes were changed by that. And is that Chris Higgins? Or I see Higgins in there. I don't know if that's actually Chris there. The reason I love Classic Tetris as a competitive sport is there's no garbage sending. The players do not hurt each other via gameplay. It is about individual achievement. Right. So it's really just what's up, Chris? It's really just about trying to outperform the other person. It's not direct competition. And trust me, all this Tetris talk is going to go straight into the fighting game talk, because it is something that I had a conversation with some people, including Kitaro. I think I talked to him a little bit about it. So just to give the proper background to everybody here, what all the different techniques is. DAS was the ability to slide pieces left and right using the in-game delayed auto, I forgot what the S stands for. Basically, when you hold left or right, you hear the piece go, delayed auto shift. Thank you, Kataru. See, there you go. This is why he's in the chat here. Thank you. Basically, if you hold right on the controller, you hear the piece go, boop, 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 boop. It's just like if you hit a key on your keyboard, it goes S. Like it has that little delay, and then it starts doing the auto shift. So that's what that means, delayed auto shift. So basically what people have found out is that, like, if you hold right, the piece will come in and go beep, 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 and then as soon as it drops, but if you keep holding right, the next piece comes in right away. It maintains the faster shift. Right? And then people started discovering you could actually go left or right, maintaining that auto shift as long as you let go of the controller and never tap left, right, or left or right again. So if I wanted to move the piece three columns, I would hold it and let it go 3 columns, let go, let that piece touch down. And as soon as it touched down, I could hit left or right, and that speed would be maintained. And the next piece would come in without that initial beep. It would just come in and go right away. And that's kind of what DAS was what Daz kind of allowed players to do. So there was this extreme skill of learning how to stop the piece at the right column, to engage left or right after it touched down at the perfect timing so the next piece could get it. And if you ever lost fast Daz, there were techniques to regain it and such. And so that was kind of the skill that was required. However, the in-game speed literally just wasn't fast enough. So by the time we got to level 29 speeds, which was the last time the speed increased in NES Tetris, so from 19 to 29, it's the same speed. And then from 29 on forever, it's one speed. But the problem was the pieces dropped so fast that if you built to a certain height, you literally couldn't get an eyepiece to the right anymore. And so basically it was really, really hard for Daz players to survive. And so Hypertappers came along, and what Hypertapping is literally hit the button, hit left and right as fast as you humanly can, and you can just do it faster than the actual game does on the repeater, basically on Daz. So if the Daz was Hypertappers could go, they could actually hit it faster. So they could actually just hit left or right faster. The problem was that like a lot of people had to play in these really uncomfortable hand positions and stuff to do hypertapping, even to the point where Joseph, you know, the two-time champion, was saying that he was hurting his wrist a lot doing that. And there was a player named Cheese who was a hypertapper, and I have a really funny feeling he probably learned hypertapping in a certain way and then started realizing he was kind of shifting into this other technique, and he developed something called rolling. And so what basically, so there you say, Kitaro says Daz is 10 moves per second, basically. So if you can go faster than that, you can actually do 10 moves. You can actually do 11 to 12 to 13 moves per second, to the point where someone like Joseph would actually get to level 35. Like he could survive to level 35 much farther past the kill screen. And I think some hyper tappers even made it to level 40, if I'm not mistaken. Kitaru can actually confirm that, what the record for hyper tappers were. And that was one thing too. Is like he said maybe 18 to 20 movements for particularly genetically gifted. Yeah, that was one of the hardest things about hyper tappers, that it required you to be just so fast, right? So for me, not for me, but Cheese discovered a new technique. So basically the NES pad is designed in such a way that left and right are particularly difficult to press. If you've actually used an NES pad before, the D-pad is kind of squishy, right? And so there's this technique, a very track and field technique, and for a lot of people, they've learned techniques where they roll their finger on a single button. So for example, on a regular controller, if I wanted to rapid tap, I roll my fingers like this. And if I learn to tap it really fast, basically, I get to hit the buttons as fast as like super fast between three fingers. This was a technique learned from a lot of people who played like Samurai Showdown when weapons clashed, and for track and field, and for other games that required that. Now, again, the NES pad is just too squishy to actually do that on. There's no way to roll your hand on it so that you could actually consistently press the button that fast. And so what someone discovered was that if I held my thumb, and some people play with the controller upside down now, by the way, but if I held my thumb basically like, I'll use this as an example here. If I held my thumb so that I barely pressed that, so I'm barely not pushing down on the controller. The reason why I'm using my phone is because it's the right shape for this. So just don't ignore my Cami wallpaper over here. But what they've learned to do is, as long as they hold the button so that they barely press it, instead of having to roll on the D-pad or roll on the D-pad on whichever side they put the controller on, they have learned to actually like put this controller on their leg, hold down like this on left or right, and what they've learned to do is to tap the back of the controller like this. And so what this does is, because they're barely pressing the button down, when they tap the controller gets pushed into their thumb essentially. And so they are actually getting the rolling technique by tapping the back of the controller. So basically, if they needed to slide it 3 columns, they would use 3 fingers. 4 columns, they would use 4. And for 5, some people learn to use their thumb, but then some people would have to do an extra tap with their thumb on there. So they would learn 1, 2, 3, 4 tap. You know, there's like a 5 tap trick basically there. Another very uncommon method is also roll fingers on top of the thumb finger. Oh, really? Some people actually do that? Like roll on their thumb? That's crazy. But, I mean, it's not that it only works on NES pads, is that on NES pads, this is by far the fastest way to press left or right at a consistent rhythm so that you can move the pieces faster than any other technique, including hypertapping. And so nowadays we are basically at the point where rollers have are basically dominating the game. And in fact, many previous hyper tappers have had to move on to rolling. So, you know, guys like Huffaluffagus and Dog Plays Tetris and Pixel Andy, etc. All of them have had to move to learn how to roll to be able to keep up with all the new crop of rollers that are coming out here. And this year's champion, Fractal, is, I mean, he's basically one of the best at this point. Because, I mean, dude, last year second place, this year first place. I mean, Jesus, that is a back-to-back right there. So what's happened now is that everybody has learned to play in this rolling technique here. And so what this has allowed people to do is to survive infinitely once you get to speed 29. So what used to be the kill screen was no longer the kill screen, as evidenced last year by, was it Fractal who chased Eric down? Was it Eric who chased Fractal down, Kitaru? I can't remember. But it was a game that lasted literally like 15 to 20 minutes because one player got such a big lead and then topped out. And then the other player, because you can't, they're fast enough that they can survive forever at level 29 speeds, they just basically rolled and got single until they caught up all the points that they needed to do. And it was literally everyone just sitting there watching him roll with singles his way to win. It was a 20-minute, 2 million point game for both players. Yeah, exactly. And so it was Eric who did the chase down last year. There you go. Thank you. Thanks, Higgins. So yeah, and Oath confirms Eric chased Fractal. And so basically what happened was the original concept of Classic Tetris was all about Tetris efficiency. You know, there was a stat on the screen for the Tetris rate, and all it did was just basically keep track of how many lines burned were contributed to Tetrises as opposed to triples, doubles, and singles. And the best players, the players who would win, would have the highest Tetris rates because level 29 was a limit. You had to get as many points as you can before 29 or else you would just die. And now, because of rolling, it was about survival less than about Tetris rate. And it really changed the way that Classic Tetris World Championships felt. And so this year, they added a new rule where they've hacked the ROM cart so that at level 39, there's actually another speed increase. At level 29, the blocks drop 1 row per frame, basically. Is it 1 row per frame? I think it is, actually. But at level 39 now, it's been hacked, so it drops 2 rows per frame, which is absolutely crazy. Yeah, so Stuntin' since 80 says, I watched the grand final yesterday. Man, those two were nuts. But the Asian kid was having so much player fun. Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, so 1G at 29, 2G at 39. So yeah, that's basically how it works. And so it brought back the Tetris rate. The Tetris rate was king again. And that's what made it feel so classic style like previous years. So honestly, this year's CTWC was one of the greatest CTWCs because we got to see that skill on display at the same time we got to preserve the classic mentality of scoring enough points before the now super kill screen, which is where basically people can't really survive. So yeah. No, I remember Kitara because after last year, I was even talking to people. Like I was talking to Sharky about it, and Sharky's like, "No, you can't do. We got to do." And it was really, really interesting. Yeah. And CTWC 2022, we let them rock because we knew we had to have it happen. We needed a chase down like that to happen so that we can justify changing the rules. Is what it was. Is any of this approved by Nintendo? No. Nintendo has no idea about like what the hell is going on at this point of time. But yeah, Kitaro says a lot of discussion in the online tournament scene to decide how to handle the line cap or extra speed up, etc., etc. The competition carts use a Game Genie like technology. Yep. So and Game Genie is okay by a really old court case. Interesting. Okay, that I did not know, Kitaro. That's actually really cool. Is there a benefit to dropping Tetraminos faster than the opponent? Only that you build up small bits of score for every column, every row that you drop it. But in the long run, it really makes absolutely no difference because it really is how many Tetrises you can get before level 39. It's about the Tetris rate. So the speed has basically no benefit. So there's no reason to play faster than the opponent, except maybe actually there's more of a benefit to play slower than the opponent, because if you play slower than the opponent, you can also listen to the commentators or even, screen glance basically. And if you see that your opponent is hitting a drought, you know that you have a drought coming up as well, or if you hear the commentators, "Oh my gosh, Blah's in a drought," and you're like, "I haven't hit that drought yet. The other guy must be ahead of me. Here comes a drought. Let me play safely." So there are some advantages to playing behind the opponent, honestly. Tetris Company. It's the Tetris Company is the best way to say it. So in the competition format, you usually want to stay around the same pace so they can't get read on your piece set. Yeah, exactly. So basically what happened then, so this year is we had probably at least the greatest match I've ever seen. Fractal said that there was another match that happened at another tournament where he said was probably the greatest match ever. I'm sure he was trying to be a little humble, but this grand finals this last year was amazing, ridiculous. And the rolling technique is basically clearly the most powerful technique. And so I was having conversations with other guys out there, and this is where the conversation started to move towards kind of this concept of FGC and where I'm talking about here with the legacy skills. Forgot to change my topic over here, so I've been talking about this whole entire time. So what's interesting about this was that the reason why CTWC limited players to only official NES pads was because clearly other controllers would have a huge advantage over the NES pad. For example, if someone built a hitbox for the NES, they would have been able to do rolling a long time ago. So they would have had a huge advantage over players using the NES pad. So for the longest of time, it was only the NES pad, the Goofy Foot, the dog bone NES pad. Was the NES Advantage actually legal? Because I'm sure the NES Advantage would be like horrible control for actually playing classic Tetris, but I wonder if the NES Advantage was actually, or the NES Max could somebody play on the Power Glove if they wanted to? But basically the way it worked was that, it was restricted to the NES controller. I was having a conversation because, as a person who plays a lot of fighting games, and we've had to deal with a lot of, SOCD stuff, yes. So, as a person who has gone through the FGC and we have the hitbox and we have the cross up, and I brought up, Tekken, Electric Wing God Fists on the cross up become negligible to perform. Even on the hitbox, Electric Wing God Fists are super easy to perform compared to joysticks. The reason why Electric Wing God Fists are hard to perform on a joystick is because there's no precise, accurate way for any of us to know when we actually click the cherry switch so that we're actually get to diagonal, right? It's literally an analog lever that we're moving. And the very first frame that you have both cherry switches clicked on a joystick is the exact moment you have to press a button. It was frame perfect. So but because you're using a joystick, it was hard to be that precise. Now, obviously, some players practice enough so that they got to the point where they could electric pretty consistently. But, I rigged up, or I had a cross up, and I'm just doing electric. Like, it's just, it becomes a non-issue, right? It literally becomes a non-issue. So, I started talking to people about this. I've talked to Sharky about it. I started talking to people at the tournament. I was like, now that rolling has kind of proven that we have a technique to be as fast as humanly possible and we could survive forever on level 29, my argument was the reason for us maintaining the NES pad is dead, right? Like, I feel like that we don't need to maintain that rule anymore, and that people should be able to just use whatever controller they want now, because obviously there's some awkward things. You got to hold a controller upside. Some people hold it upside down. You have to have your hand at a particular tensile strength. Now, obviously, it's still not as bad as hypertapping, which was really damaging to the hands and carpal tunnels and stuff like that. But, rolling could cause that a little bit, because a lot of the players have to stiff their hand in just a way so that it's at just the right strength, etc. So I keep saying to myself right now, is just like, why not just allow all controllers? And if that's the case, why not just start playing on Tetris Effect? Because Tetris Effect has a classic Tetris emulation on there where they've tried their best. It's not exactly it's not super perfect accurate right now, I've heard, but I've heard it's pretty dang accurate. I've heard one player say it's not quite the same. Fractal says it feels like it's exactly the same. In fact, he said he practiced on Tetris Effect Connected's version as well. But yeah, so like Mike Lee says, a lot of those kids are ruining their hands. And as someone who's messed up hands and wrists, forcing strange techniques as the skill cap is bad. Why not make separate categories based on controllers? I mean, my point being was that, yeah, maybe we needed to in the past. But because we have this situation now where the rollers have basically proven that if you practice this technique enough, there's probably no advantage of a hitbox over rolling. I would argue that they would be of equal skill and equal levels, right? And so this is where the conversation started going here with someone that I was talking to at CTWC. If we opened up the controller so that you could do anything you wanted on it, the real question comes down to, is that kind of disrespectful to all the people who have been spending so much time learning rolling? Like, I talked to Huffaluffagus. Huff is one of the best hyper tappers, and before the rolling age of rolling started showing up, Huff was one of the best hyper tappers, right? In the first online CTWC, I think Huff got second place, or was that the second one that he got second place? One year it was Andy who got second. Another year was Huff that got second. But Huff was one of the best hyper tappers, and he had to learn rolling. And I asked him, how long did it take him to learn rolling? And he says it took him like 6 months to learn, like 7 months to learn. He had to play a whole bunch. Like, he had to really put in the work to learn rolling so that he could keep up. If we suddenly allowed new different kind of controllers, of course, making sure that there's no turbo or any sort of crazy things, like extra rubber bands or whatever that makes it actually easier to use than just pressing a single button, is that disrespectful to the people who spent all the time rolling? And the analog to this has been a conversation that I've had with Tekken players, is Electric Wing Godfist, which is why I keep bringing it up, which is why it was in my preview picture. Although it was a Street Fighter Cross Tekken picture, I know, but it was a cool angle of the electric, so it just looked neat. Anyways, but in any case, because the modern controllers, like Hitbox, like Cross Up, have made Electric Wing Godfist basically whatever, like especially the cross-up controller. And I've always heard different things on whether cross-up is banned for Tekken or not. Is anybody here, Necromancy Black is here, is the cross-up actually banned? Is it actually banned? Right, but it wasn't a skill that depended on messing up your hands. But sure enough, guys like Kudons and all these, so it is legal. Okay, so let's right now a bunch of them complain that Tekken 8 is making sidesteps powerful again. Well, regardless, let's address this, right? So the Electric Wing Godfist is super easy to do on these controllers, and certain people have actually been practicing Electric Wing Godfist like literally for years to get to the point where they're consistent, and they have to use their exact controller because every controller is going to have a different give on when you're actually hitting the left and right cherry switches, when you go forward, neutral, down, and then when you move to the diagonal, the very moment you click that cherry switch on the joystick is where you hit the button. And a lot of players play on pad these days, which makes it a little bit easier, but for those guys who have put in literal years of practice of just sitting there doing EGWF over and over and over, EWGF over and over and over and over again, I argued that we should change the way the Electric Wing Godfist should be performed so that it has to be exactly 2 frames after you hit left or something like that, and make it come out 2 frames faster so that basically it's kind of mimicking a little the same thing. I mean, obviously, I don't know Tekken well enough to be able to perfectly get the frame data exactly right and stuff like that, but the idea was that if you made it so that you had to hit the button exactly 2 frames after you hit left or right trying to perform an electric, now suddenly it doesn't matter what controller you use. That timing of the perfect 2 frames is something that you just have to learn inherently in your core soul, regardless if you're a hitbox or a cross-up or whatever like that. It's something that everybody has to practice. But the problem now is that you've ruined everybody else who has practiced EWGFs their whole entire lives. Like, you've literally just taken away this skill that they developed, and it's a legit skill for the game because it's never changed, and it is something that has been maintained forever. You have basically just murdered years and years and years of training for these players who have learned it, right? And right, exactly like Forrest says, making it easier also might make it OP as well. Hey, thank you for all the subs. Gizergin with the sub over there. Fanta7686 with the sub. We actually hit a hype train over here. I also saw another sub earlier, but thank you guys for all the subs over here. Appreciate it very, very much. And Lurker Spine with the 300 bits. Thank you, thank you. And right. And so, yeah, so Mike Lee says, yeah, same could be said about Street Fighter charge times. Exactly. And Shaq the Great says that's gatekeeping in the end, right? But charge times, yeah, they're charge times. I mean, like, it's kind of crazy, but like, I mean, would it be wrong if, yeah, it would be wrong because it's information for the opponent as well. But God, Street Fighter training mode needs to add the charge timer to the screen, to the training mode screen. Honestly, it really does. They just need to be able to see the charge time bar in training mode so people could learn how to charge properly. I think that would be super, super useful. But the point being is that, are we hurting these legacy players? And is it fair to hurt these legacy players? Let's take a look at a game that has actually done this, right? We actually have a game out there that has done this, and that's Guilty Gear Strive. So Guilty Gear, up to Exert, has been, like Tekken, a very heavy legacy-based game. techniques discovered in one version of the game are normally maintained regardless of whether they are a bug or not in future versions of the game. Even a game like Exerd, where only a few characters needed to use jump installs had been maintained since Guilty Gear X, where it was kind of discovered and was a glitch, but they've left it the entire time. In fact, they did so even with Chip and Faust and their faultless defense canceling. So you could always plink faultless defense, and so Faust, for example, could jump, and if you did 2K down and kick, he would do the little scalpel drill. However, if you held down back and plinked kick, or it was like you plinked kick into another button, what it would do is it would start the down 2 plus K, and then literally 1 frame later, carrot cancel it into the faultless defense. But what that would do is make Faust basically jump into the air, just flash green for that 1 frame that you faultless defense, and he would start dropping because the 2K changed his momentum. So he had instant overheads where he would jump, do the faultless defense cancel trick, and then jump kick, and he could combo you, basically give himself a bunch of short hops. Chip could do it while running forward and jumping, and then use his down kick, which drilled straight down. So it looked like he was about to cross you up, but then he would do the same trick, and then he would end up falling in front. So he could create a left-right mix-up in that situation. So, all right. So Kraken. So it wasn't that they added moves with auto jump install properties. It's just that what they did was certain moves put you in a jump state. That's the way jump install works. The game gets tricked into thinking you're in a jump state so that when you actually Roman cancel it, you get a double jump. If some moves, when performed off the ground, don't put you in a jump state, so when you Roman canceled it, you weren't considered jumping, so you had no double jump available to you. So in jump install, for example, if you hit with kick and then hit up, the game was like, you're jumping, so let's put you in the jump state. But then you Gatling that button into another button. The game was like, oh, wait, never mind, I'm going to Gatling. Gatling has higher priority than jump canceling. But the game already puts you into the jump state. So when you did one of those moves where you were literally considered grounded, now you installed a jump state into the move so that now when you Roman canceled it, you could double jump. So that's basically kind of how that worked over there. Strive took all that away. There's no jump installs in Strive anymore. And Faust and Chip cannot carrot cancel their 2Ks anymore into the faultless defense. I mean, I think they can, but I don't think it actually does anything to their momentum, for example. I think it just does whatever it needs to. 1 minute left for the hype train. No, there's only 10 seconds left. Anyways, so basically they took that skill away, and a lot of people got mad. A lot of people got mad, and a lot of people were like, you know what? They've taken the skill away from Guilty Gear. There was all these cool techniques. Why would you change this? Daisuke's mentality at this point was, I don't want to make a legacy Guilty Gear anymore. I want to make a new Guilty Gear that everybody has to learn together so that I can bring in newer players and stuff. It was a risky decision from Daisuke because clearly there are a lot of Exerd heads out there who hate Strive. Like, they just passionately hate Strive and think Strive is the most skillless game in the entire existence. Right? Like, I have literally talked to people that I was like, well, Strive did good things. And they're like, name one good thing Strive did. And I'm like, holy crap, And so it's a big risk to take away these kind of legacy things. Now, Street Fighter has managed to avoid this because we got Alpha 1 right away, and that just, oh boy. If anybody out there ever says, hey, this game was dumbed down, look at Strive, it's so dumbed down, may I introduce you to Street Fighter Alpha 1, okay? Back then, we didn't understand the concept of dumbed down, so we didn't really call it out for that. But now in retrospect, when you look at Street Fighter Alpha 1, that is about the most exaggerated instance of a dumbed down fighting game in a new series in the history of fighting games. Alpha 1 added an easy mode, which let you auto block. They added chain combos. They added air blocking. They added alpha counters so that you didn't get pressured. They added, I said air blocking already, I think. Dude, that game was made so that you could roll when you got knocked down, so you didn't have to worry about Oki anymore. Like, they tried to do everything in their power to make sure that this game was easy for beginners. And so, anyways, I'm getting off topic talking about Alpha 1 here. Strive, there's a lot of people who think Strive is very dumbed down, but, you talk to the people who enjoy Strive, the top players, there's nothing simple about Strive. And, like for a game that supposedly is supposed to be beginner friendly, they added Happy Chaos, and then they added, and then they added Asuka. And then they added Asuka. Okay? Like, you put Asuka in any fighting game, there is nothing simplistic about this character at all. He is probably the most complicated fighting game character that I have ever seen in my life, right? I mean, it takes like a freaking, like we used to joke Guilty Gear takes a PhD to learn. Asuka himself takes a PhD to learn by himself. Like, literally the character by himself is ridiculous to learn. And if you don't study what he does, it's really hard to fight him too. Otherwise, you're just like, I'm blocking cubes. I have no idea what's happening. What, he teleported? When can he do that? Like, if you don't study Asuka, he's just basically going to murder you, basically. And so, there's a lot of complexity in Strive. So no, game is not dumbed down. It's not simplified. Have they tried to make it a little bit more approachable? As someone said in the chat earlier, Strive is probably the most financially successful Guilty Gear, at least in the NA regions, and had the most entrants ever of any Guilty Gear game at EVO, topping 2,000. And even this past year, where Guilty Gear was its second year, actually increased in the number of entrants who played in there. Now, obviously, people are going to say, well, Street Fighter 7,000 players brought in a lot more people, so a lot more people signed up for Strive while they were there. True. Doesn't matter. Numbers went up. Strive, very, very popular. It's very, very popular. And so, as a result, was Daisuke wrong? Was Daisuke wrong for this, right? And now we're getting to a situation where Tekken, they really are changing the game a lot. Not necessarily changing the Electric Wing Godfist, but aggression! The name of the game for Tekken 8. A lot of people are mad. A lot of people are really mad at this heat mechanic right now. And so there is this idea here, that we've been talking about, for example, do we just allow any controllers for CTWC so someone can mod their own hitbox that works on the NES so that they can actually just play rolling easily on the controller without having to learn some crazy thing where they have to hold their controller upside down and take 6 months to learn this technique. Like, I want to try to learn rolling, but I don't have the time to put in there. But if I tried to learn rolling on a hitbox on the NES, I might actually be able to do that, right? So do we want to preserve that kind of thing? Do we want to preserve the Electric Wing Godfist with the perfect frame timing at the buttons at the same time when some controllers bypass that difficulty completely? Rolling on a button is also still not trivial. I don't want to make it sound like anybody can just roll on a button. It's like super easy. Clearly, it's still very difficult and needs a lot of practice, but it's going to still be a lot easier to practice on that than it is on an NES pad. Because the one thing about rolling is the timing required for you to start the rolling is really hard. And I can't believe all the players have been able to do that consistently, piece after piece after piece, dude. It's ridiculous. You have like less than a second to have that window of when you start your roll to start moving the piece as soon as it shows up into the screen. So, the reason why it's an issue, if it's still a hard technique, Shaq the Great, for rolling, is just because we want to open it up to as many people as possible. That's just really what it comes down to, right? And we also want to make it so that maybe you don't have to go try to find an NES pad, at a retro gaming place. There aren't that many NES pads out there anymore. Like, the number of NES pads out there is limited, right? If we just start opening up, and then also the possibility of perhaps moving to Tetris Connected, Tetris Effect Connected, and start playing on that platform as well. The reason being for that is because now we're playing on a modern game. Enhance, which makes Tetris Effect, has more of a reason to sponsor CTWC, contribute a lot more to the prize pool, and the Tetris company has more reason to basically say we support this event because they're not playing on a version that everybody just has to buy used now, that they can actually sell modern versions of on Tetris Effect, or maybe even have the impetus to go and just create a modern version of Classic Tetris to sell things with. Because even if they made a modern one right now, everyone would still have to play on the NES, because that's the rules, and they still have to play on the NES pad, because that's the rules, right? And so Kitaru says maintenance is tough too. Gamepad rollers buy third-party replacement pads, sometimes artificially break them in with poking, cutting holes, etc. Just rolling a Sanwa OBS F30 or something is going to hold up a lot longer. Exactly. And so my mindset right now is trying to open up Classic Tetris to bigger audiences, mass audiences, and give people the ability to access it and join in the community and have fun, and have ways for the Tetris company and games like Enhance, companies like Enhance and the games like Tetris Effect to make extra money to really help grow the scene. I mean, look, CTWC has been running for so long, but CTWC is comparable to like old school FGC, like seriously back in the Alpha 2 days, right? It is a grassroots effort here. There's not a lot of like, it's not like, CTWC videos have 19 million views on YouTube, but that's not translating into money at the events and stuff. And, as much as we do all this stuff for love, you'd like to be able to pay all the guys who are putting in the hard work and doing all this stuff, all this crazy stuff for the thing, because it sucks, right? I mean, we're all doing it for love, but at the same time, if you're running CTWC, you look at all these people putting all this blood, sweat, and tears, you'd like to thank them by paying them a little bit, right? Right, so Super Famicom says focusing too much on marketing to please mainstream is not a good solution in the long run. That will kill some fighting game franchise and betray the original spirit. Yeah, absolutely. There is that argument too. But again, as someone who's been doing the fighting game stuff for 30 years now, I'm sick of it. Honestly, Super Famicom. I think there's a way to maintain both. The fact that people consider trying to grow and become more palpable to mainstream and then losing the old spirit is diametrically opposed to each other, I think is false, right? Mike Lee Story says Strive and SF6 is proof of that. You don't even have to go that far. Melee. Right? I mean, like, Melee is about as mainstream and simple to play as possible and approachable to everyone on the planet. But then there's just this ridiculous high-level Melee scene out there, and they've been maintaining it forever. Sure, they don't have the Nintendo backing, which sucks, right? But if Nintendo backed Melee, Do you think the Melee scene would be like, get out of here, Nintendo, take your money with you, we need to maintain integrity of grassroots? Or you think they would be like, fucking finally, oh my God, like, please support us, Nintendo, please, let us stream, let us run these events, give us prize money, please, right? I mean, that's the thing. And it really just depends on how involved you are with it, right? So again, a lot of people out there, yes, absolutely, you're just going to be like, no, you know what? Get the hell out of here with your money. I want my grassroots. But seriously, for someone like me, I can literally tell you I'm sick of it. Even back in the day, we were always like, if you watch one of those trailers for Bang the Machine that's actually on YouTube, there's that scene where Vi is just sitting there like watching the Japanese tournament. Like, do you see this? They're actually running these in stadiums and shit. Like, can you imagine if we could do that here in the States? And he just like cuts off and he's just sitting there like not saying anything anymore. Like, he's just thinking, man, if only. Why do you think someone like Vi works so hard at Level Up? Why do you think someone like Arturo is so hell-bent on trying to like create this optimal thing, and why he was so hell-bent on working with Matcherino? Because a lot of us who have been in the scene for this long, who did it for love, we're kind of sick of it. Okay? Like, I get it. If you're newer to the scene and you haven't been in it for 30 some odd years like we have, you're like, I still do it for love. We don't need the money. No, fuck that. Give us the money, dude. Like, seriously, like, as long as we are the ones that get to stay in charge. The scary part was when something like MLG tried to come in and take over the FGC and run it their way with continuation rules and all this other stuff. That's what's scary. But when you have something like Red Bull coming in here and all they do is just hire everybody who's already involved and says, run it your own way. Even when Sony PlayStation took over Evo, you know, with RTS actually buying out Evo, does Evo feel very different? No, because they let Rick run Evo the way we've always run Evo. In fact, it wasn't even Sony or RTS that said Smash couldn't be at Evo. It was literally Nintendo that said, no, we're not putting Smash at Evo. Like, so they were letting us run things the way we always have been, and Evo hasn't felt drastically different. Right? It still feels grassroots in a lot of ways, right? You go walk into the ballroom, we're all still playing on fold-out tables. There's no fancy glowing booths anywhere, right? Yeah, exactly. So the stream is a little bit different. Sure, there's more ads, but again, like, I don't know what people want. Like, I don't know what people want. Like, you have to have the ads, you know, because the Evo's got to make some money, because RTS bought it, Sony bought it, but they're not going to hold on to a sinking ship. May I just remind you that, what was it? Epic just killed, what was it? It was a music service, right? Epic purchased a music service, a Bandcamp, and they just literally murdered Bandcamp, right? Like, anybody who purchases anything can murder it in an instant. Microsoft just purchased Activision. You think that Microsoft, if Activision, they were just like, whatever, and they just murdered it? Like, dude, it's like a second notice, right? Like, at a second notice, you can do these kind of things, right? So these things have to be able to sustain themselves. Otherwise, they will be taken out. And so, yeah, the ads are are an evil that we have to maintain right now, to the point where we get enough popularity and views so that we don't need as many ads anymore if we have better sponsors. If we have, here's the Chipotle playback, here's the Chipotle replay. Now let's head over to the Cup Noodles analyst desk. You know, oh, what a noodly game. Like that's the thing, right? Like, you know, as a commentator, does it suck to have to like say some of these things sometimes? Yeah, it does. But you know that it's part of that. And again, do we want to avoid all that and just stay grassroots? I mean, again, where's all the events right now? Where are all the events? Why is there no SoCal regionals? Why is there no NorCal regionals? Why was Big E threatening to stop running 4 majors a year? Where's final round, right? These guys aren't going to be doing this forever. They're getting older, and new people aren't coming in and taking over because there's no reason to. So we want to grow the scene. And so obviously we veered very far off topic here, but the question comes down to is, do we want to modify these games so that we can get broader appeal, right? So some of these games are doing it the right way. Broader appeal is not just get everybody to play it and make it easier to play. It's also visuals, right? Street Fighter 6 look at Street Fighter 5, look at Street Fighter 6. I've already complained about this about Street Fighter V. Even when Street Fighter V was the biggest thing, I said that the game is probably the worst fighting game in terms of presentation in Street Fighter history, right? Like, it was so bare bones. We had no exciting, crazy things. Even when you activated Ultras, the first time we saw that, you saw the camera angle changes. Everyone was like, oh my God. And then by the time we got to Street Fighter V, they innovated no presentation. And Street Fighter 6, they added the counter DIs. There's all this flashing, colors. The character animations are beautiful. The walking into the ring, the faces, all these things. They did so much, and it's more enjoyable to the audience. So clearly, there's a lot of responsibility on the devs to actually, improve watchability of these fighting games. Strive did the same thing. The giant counter, the combo meters, which everyone said was so distracting, and now nobody sees them. Like, do you guys still see them? I don't see them anymore unless I actively try to look for them. Like, Jesus, that combo counter is big. But like, when I'm actually playing the game, I literally never see it anymore, right? And so, like, obviously the devs have a lot of responsibilities now, but I feel like the players have a little bit of responsibility on that as well, into not trying to be so stuck on legacy stuff. Yeah, KOF, MVCI, both of them, Necromancy Black, look so bad that on launch nobody could bother to play them. Dragon Ball Fighters, right? Look, I am of the opinion that when Dragon Ball Fighters first showed up, it wasn't that good of a fighting game. I played it and I didn't enjoy it. I personally didn't enjoy it. I will go on record to say that. And so I didn't keep up with the game. But the game was so goddamn beautiful, and it just pulled in audiences like crazy, right? Presentation is a huge, huge, huge thing. And it basically sunk MVCI because they got announced at the same E3, and you saw Chen face, and then you saw Dragon Ball, and you're like, seriously, like, you don't, like, you would use the guy looking behind him at the other girl meme, except I don't even think we held hands with MVCI long enough to even generate that meme, Like, that girl wouldn't even just be in the picture. He's already looking at Drago. Like, she would have had to been in the front, and he's already looking at her. Like, we don't even need, it wouldn't have lasted that long. Let's just put it that way. So basically, but it's not just about presentation and training tools and in-game training tools and stuff like that. But it does have to be that players can actually play the game more easily. It's funny, on Twitter, I once complained about Drive Impact, and I was like, God, I just kind of wish that they would get rid of Drive Impact. I hate them. And then I admitted this is a salty tweet, so obviously don't pay attention to it. But everybody paid attention to it. But the funny thing is, a lot of people were like, no, don't get rid of Drive Impact. I love Drive Impact. And most of the people who said that were intermediate players, right? And so, like, there's this mechanic in the game that is actually helping a lot of these intermediate players because it gives them something to do. Right, Necromancy Black? I made a salty tweet? What? No way. No way. I'm the happiest, nicest guy ever. But yeah, like, literally, a lot of intermediate players still love having Drive Impact because it gives them something to do, and it feels powerful. And when they absorb things and hit people, they get to land their combos that they practice, etc., etc. It's a really powerful intake mechanic out there, which is also what I've said about parries in Third Strike, right? Everybody and their mother tries to parry everything. If you don't know anything about Third Strike back in the day, when someone threw a fireball at you, you parried that fireball. And everyone tries to parry on Wake Up. And every top Third Strike player will tell you guest pairing on Wake Up is a horrible idea. But you know what every intermediate player will do forever? Guest parry. Forever and ever and ever and ever. And so that's what we see a lot of, right? We see a lot of people doing these guest parries in that situation. Why? Because it's endorphins. It's fun. It gets you excited. And when you parry, you get to hit the guy and combo them or do whatever. And it's just like intake mechanics are so important. And Guilty Gear Strive and Street Fighter 6 are full of them. So a lot of people really, really enjoy that. Salty tweets can confirm when James had nightly Teppen tweets, he would say something positive about it each night. Exactly. I had nothing but good things to say about Teppen. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, man. But basically, this is important. And so as long as we try to maintain these legacy things that people want to maintain out of tradition because we don't want to lose the legacy skills. You know, I usually present things and I try not to be on one side or the other because I just like to present conversation and I want to know what you guys think. But I'm actually I'm actually in the position that I think preserving legacy stuff isn't necessarily what we should do. Like, I think it's overrated. It's why I don't rail on modern controls. Do I hate fighting modern players? Not really, but do they get to do things that they probably couldn't had they not had modern controls? Sure, but then I'm like, okay, right, modern controls. Don't test their reaction to this. Just play prediction smart, etc., etc. Because when you play against normal players, sometimes you count on them not being ready for stuff and you get to do things to them. But then when you're fighting against modern players with the right mentality, you'll play just a very solid fundamental game where their reaction time, you've basically removed their ability to beat you just by having good reactions, right? You play a different style, a different mindset. So I don't even mind modern controls. Like, I don't want to get rid of modern controls. I think it's cool that it allows some people to jump in the game, right? Like, I think that's really, really cool. And yeah, Forrest says, and he's very right about this, but I'm a Street Fighter player, and each Street Fighter is vastly different. And I'm going to tell you right now, Street Fighter is better off for it. Right? Street Fighter is extremely better off for it. Because you know why it's better off for it? Because everybody is still playing Super Turbo. Everybody is still playing Third Strike. Some parts of the world, everybody's still playing Champion Edition. A lot of people are still playing Alpha 2. A lot of people are still playing Alpha 3. And you know what? Instead of having one series that just changes, fairly differently between each iteration, we literally have like 7 or 8 different Street Fighters that a lot of different people can enjoy for very different reasons. And I think that that's really, really good. So the changes from Street Fighter 5 to Street Fighter 4 to 5 were good? Yeah, absolutely. Street Fighter 5, if you guys want to understand, has brought in a giant group of players that we did not have before. Street Fighter has always been a heart game. Always been a heart game. Every version has been a heart game. It has never been a mind game. Street Fighter V was the first mind game where the game told you what was going on. It was about studying. It was about understanding frame data. There are a lot of players who could not play old Street Fighter games that when they played Street Fighter V, because their brain was more mathematical, they'd be like, oh, I get it. It's their turn. I can't do anything. This is the guessing game. They brought in a ton of Street Fighter players that never played Street Fighter before. And there's a lot of Street Fighter players, 5 players out there who don't like 6 because 6 moved away from that a little bit, right? Street Fighter 6, however, did a good job melting the two together. But Street Fighter 5 clearly brought in a huge slew of players that we did not have before. So absolutely Street Fighter 5 was a wonderful, wonderful change because it introduced fighting games to a group of people. It introduced Street Fighter to a bunch of people that didn't play fighting games before. So that's the thing. So, yes, Street Fighter's better off for having different versions. And I think Strive right now is better off having that. And in fact, the fact that Arxis went back and added rollback to Exerd while Strive was in its second year, and like literally Daisuke's like, yes, I changed the game. Yes, I know a lot of you are mad. Here, let me help you keep playing the version that you guys like, was still, to me, the greatest thing that a fighting dev has ever done. They put rollback in the previous version of the game while the current version of the game was still brand new. And you know what? It didn't hurt Strive sales. It didn't hurt Strive's entry numbers. It did nothing to Strive. And do you see, this is exactly what I mean. If you like the old version, go play the old version. Let everybody play the new version. Let everybody play the new version. Let them enjoy their game. There are a lot of great players that we are meeting now thanks to Strive, right? A lot of these great players who are top players in Strive, they're new to Strive. They're new to the Guilty Gear franchise because of Strive. And now Guilty Gear is going to be on their radar, so whenever Guilty Gear very vastly victory comes out, you know, like, then they will still have their eyes on Strive. More people will have their eyes on Strive, on Guilty Gear very vastly victory, because like very vastly versus victory, because so many people played Strive, right? Strive has now opened up the door to a lot of people playing Guilty Gear, and now people are going to pay more attention to it. And that's a win overall. And this is why I for me, you know, trying to fight against this, try to maintain this legacy thing, these people arguing that people playing modern controls on Street Fighter 6 are babies because they can't learn the new. Have you actually tried modern controls? Like, I tried to do Zangief's combo of like, it was like light kick, drive rush, low jab, down forward medium into super, and it was impossible on modern controls. It was so hard to do on modern controls. Like, I have to remember to shift this button to hit this button to get the light kick, and then dash cancel drive button with this drive rush button, and then I gotta make sure I hold this, and then it's this direction for the suit. Dude, like, it was freaking, dude. So look, everything is easier to us when we're used to it, right? And so a lot of modern players, yeah, it's going to be easier for them because they learned it, but that's the thing. Let them learn it. Let them play that way. You know, we still haven't proved that modern controls is the way to go. So let's take a look at Tetris, for example. Hypertappers and Daz players cannot beat rollers. They cannot beat rollers. I told you about Huff and Dog Plays Tetris and Pixel Andy and everybody out there. Even Joseph started learning rolling as well, even though he was the premier hyper tapper. All of them had to go to rolling because they can't win if they didn't. That's how powerful rolling is. Modern controls is not that powerful yet. If we haven't seen every single player move to modern, then it's not the best. Now, what's interesting thing is that modern is still also designed, keep in mind, with handicaps, right? So it's still not quite the same thing that David Serlin said. Like, Serlin just says, I don't want motions at all, right? But like I said, you can actually see that modern controls is designed with a handicap, and you are missing moves and you have a damage handicap. So Capcom clearly in internal testing did probably note that there is some advantages, and they're doing their best to try to keep it as possible, right? And yes, self-cool. I agree. Motions are cool. I love motions. It's so much more fun for me to do quarter circle forward ×2 if the super comes out on wake up, but it's like so much more enjoyable to do those kind of things, you know. I really do enjoy doing the motions because I've been doing it for years. It's really, really fun. So again, you know, there are definitely a lot of advantages to motion controls, but Capcom is trying their best to make sure it's not the advantage. So in other words, if it was just 6 normal buttons and then a special move button on the side, like if they just turned it into like an 8 or a 10 button game or something like that, then we're talking about a situation where maybe it's a little too strong. But as it is right now, it's fairly balanced, and we haven't seen modern dominate yet. So there is no evidence out there that modern is broken, right? And yeah, I mean, I had someone in my Shoryuken scrimmage tournament one time literally say, he's like, I can't play fighting games anymore because I have arthritis in my hands. And now he's playing Street Fighter 6 with modern controls. He said, this is the first time I've been able to play fighting games in like 10 years or 5 years or whatever it was, he said. So there's kind of nice. Yeah, so yeah, like Kevin Madi says, a big part of the implementation of modern controls is not to completely invalidate classic controls. Exactly. It wasn't their goal. They're not trying to replace it. They're trying to make sure there's advantage both ways, right? See, Baron Spaghetti, see, that's the thing. Is like, I actually still like mashing button special moves. I miss them horribly because they were a different kind of move, and I really, really miss them. They were a way to do charge moves without having charge. But most mash special moves could be intentionally really strong because you can't just bust it out while walking. So there was this really, really smart idea that you could make those moves really, really good because you can't just walk and do them. You had to hide them behind things and stuff. And like, there was this really interesting balance concept with button mashing moves. And I really missed that. I really had liked that. I really like those, but of course, they just don't work with modern controls, because if you balance them around the fact that you can't do them instantly, and then in modern controls you could do them instantly, well, then we have a problem. We would have a problem. So, yeah, exactly. Like Honda, like Honda's hand slap in ST was super busted. But the fact that you had to sit there and see him with buttons before he could just do it at any time is what made it balanced. You know, you had to commit to it sometimes. So even when they started mashing, if you jumped, that was it. They would come out with it and get killed, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of really cool ideas tied to button mashing moves. So I don't think it's an overall objective feeling that we're better off without them. I personally miss them a lot. But yeah, balancing move. I hate the idea of making moves more powerful while balancing them with stupid inputs. So, I mean, do you hate Electric Wing Godfist, Necromancy Black? Do you hate Electric Wing Godfist, right? Like, if SPD motion was a DP, we would have some serious issues and stuff like that. Yeah, Granblue is an interesting way of doing it, and they took it away. They're taking it away from Rising. Going to be the exact same thing. It's going to be the exact same thing. Okay, so Necromancy Black, you do hate Electric Wing Godfist. Okay, there you go. So just wanted to make sure you're consistent. That's all. That's all. The thing is, motion controls for specials were intentionally difficult, as a special move was a reward. By making it simple, the special moves are less special and just a way to extend combos. Right, there is that feeling as well, right? Special moves had this cool feeling that you had to do something special to do it. It was like a martial arts technique. It was like how I always said the reason why Guitar Hero was better than Guitar Freaks was because they put 5 buttons and forced your hand to move up and down so that it felt more like you were doing chords and you had to lose the position of your hands. Guitar Freaks was done for a little more simplicity so that you could keep your 3 fingers on the same 3 buttons the entire time. But literally adding a 5th button so that your hand had to move up and down, so you had to let go and go to different places, is what made Guitar Hero, I feel like, catch on so well because it felt like a skill that you had to learn, like an instrument. So in the same way that it works that way for a rhythm game, I felt like special move motions was similar to emulating a martial arts kind of thing. You had to practice, you had to learn technique. The special move felt powerful because you had to do something different for it. You had to do more than just hit a button. And that was one of the cool things about special moves. And that's where I stand. But of course, I'm old school. So of course I'm going to think this way. So yeah, see, exactly. The new Guitar Freaks uses the 5-button layout to some extent, right? Like Guitaru said. Right. Guitar Freaks is a lot more about rhythmic complexity. Yep. I forgot to turn on my cat auto feeder. Cat auto feeder is still going here. But in any case, I like having the extra, the extra execution, right, of the motions. But even having said that, even being an old school player, I'm not going to adhere to my old school mentality and be like, modern sucks, down with modern. Like, that's not how I'm going to approach it, because if we have a way to add more people to play fighting games, I just don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I literally just think that that's fine. And that's kind of the whole point of this conversation, is that I feel like we're in a stage right now where we have to start thinking about growing things. Daigo once said on his stream that he thinks fighting games are outdated. And it was interesting because right before he said that, I was thinking to myself, I think fighting games are outdated. I think we stick onto a lot of things that we don't need to. And I think that there's a lot of cool things that we can change, right? I mean, like something as simple as, why is there only one animation for every super in DNF Duel? Why? Why? Why not present like 10 different angles for the same super? If you don't want it to get that complicated, just change the camera angles, have 10 different ones, and maybe have them change camera angles every single time and randomize between them. So at least it looks unique every time we see it. Like there's 10 camera changes and it can jump between any one of them and show us a cool angle for the super, right? Why do we not scroll the screen a little bit farther when we get into the corners? Why don't we draw actual walls on the stages and scroll the screen a little bit more instead of having 50% of the screen be completely useless to viewers? Why not keep the action a little more centered, than we normally do? There's a lot of things that we have that I think, there are a lot of cheats hidden in those angles, for sure. But you can work with it. You can definitely work with it. There's no reason not to try. There's no reason not to try is the best way to put it. So at the same time, the anti-modern sentiment makes a lot of sense, says SP Patrick. The FGC has always been about the grind and not about cutting corners. Anything resembling shortcuts or training wheels were shunned on sight. Now suddenly the FGC to be all welcoming and inclusive over modern controls, I'm not sure what Capcom expected. And again, my thought is that I don't think modern makes it that much easier. I think what a lot of people are seeing modern do is that they aren't taking into account that it's still kind of hard to do. Yes, the special moves and stuff like that are a little bit easier to do, but got all the weird hoops that you got to make sure that you're holding the controller in the right direction, and sometimes you gotta shift for this button and do all this stuff. It's just like really weird. Very, very weird. Anyways, but it is easier to start, for sure. Do you know if we're getting new players outside of Japan? Most people's mindsets to a fighting game is, I don't know how to play, and people are telling them modern controls is easy mode. Yeah, I mean, if that's a way to get them to play, sure. And yeah, a lot of people have trouble with motions. And if it helps them get in there, and you know what? There's still a benefit to doing the motions even while in modern. So some people may eventually start learning to do special moves and combos with the full motion so they get the 100% damage. And that might actually help them move to being a classic player in the end anyway, right? If they get good at that. But as long as they have that little handhold to help them get in there, I don't think it's a terrible thing. That's the thing, right? Yeah, perfect flash knuckle timing is not any easier in modern. It's a good example right there. Yeah, it's better than easy operation for sure. So modern isn't easy, but it is bringing a ton of new players in the U.S. and Japan. I'm sure it is a lot of other places too. If anyone's played Cross Tag Battle, those controls are made universal to the most basic versions rather than the same as the game the characters came from, and it's fine. Yeah. I mean, Yuzuriha, that's the first time I've ever been able to use that character, was in Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle. Oh, man. Having the button versus motion trade-off makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I agree. I wonder what the thinking was for Grand Blue giving 100% damage for the modern controls. Actually, they've always had the 100% damage. It's just that the cooldowns were different. So if you did the instant special move, it would take longer for you to be able to get access to the special move again than if you did it with the motion. But now the cooldowns are exactly the same. It's just what it is at this point in time. So a lot of streamers that have never touched fighting games are all trying out SF6, and many of them talk about the reason why is because of modern controls. Yeah, exactly. Oh, it had decreased damage on supers based on range. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. But yeah, like that's the thing, right? So Street Fighter 6 is doing a lot of great things to get new players in, right? So people are talking about the CR Cup and what it did and Steam sales, etc., etc. Yeah, and a lot of that is going to be that. I just talked to a friend, you know, who brought his little girl to the tournament. To the CTWC tournament. We were talking fighting games, and I don't remember if he brought his daughter or if he was just talking about his daughter, but basically he said, yeah, it's like she's loving dynamic controls. She can learn play fighting games with me because of dynamic controls. And as silly as dynamic controls feels like it is, because all you're doing is executing an AI, but like, you get them hooked, you get them interested. And, you know, if you get someone interested in something, the effort to learn the harder stuff is that much better. But if you're like, hey, learn this fighting game, now learn how to do quarter circle forward ×2 after a DP by blending the motions together. And you saw how everybody in Max's chat was like, whoa, you could do that? Like, I didn't know you could blend the motions together. Like, there's so many things that we take advantage of, that we take for granted, that a lot of people don't teach out there. And it's crazy. And we probably don't realize how difficult a lot of that is. So, the Ludwig tournament. Yeah, the Street Fighter and Tetris content. Mike Lee says, I probably follow more JP streamers than US streamers. And a lot of them who are primarily LOL Big 3 FPS games picked up Street Fighter 6. Yeah. The quarter circle forward ×2 was designed to be a more difficult thing to execute. In Super Turbo, they made it even harder in Super Turbo, but they just didn't want everybody just to sit there and just to be able to do low forward into Super. So in Super Turbo, they made it specifically hard, that it was really hard to do that. Obviously, as a person who's played Super Turbo forever, it's not that bad for me now, but for a lot of people out there, doing low forward into Super, as much as you could do it in other games, you go to Super Turbo and you're like, why can't I do low forward into Super? It just doesn't work. The same techniques don't work. They made it harder because they just didn't want it to be super easily. Technically, comboing into supers and ST were glitches. Yeah, in a way, because it even worked on moves that couldn't be canceled into special moves. I tried to teach 3S to my sister. Her brain melted. We taking for granted our skills we learned over the years. Yeah. Kevin Motti says, as a self-admitted advocate for modern controls, I really don't like dynamic controls. I think they hurt potential new players more than they help, but that's just me. I do agree with you, Kevin Motti. Like, I do think that there's definitely downsides to it, but I think it's not supposed to be a training wheels thing. I think it's supposed to be designed for literally Thanksgiving dinners and, hi, my kid is 5 years old. Like, I think that that's what they're for, honestly. And remember, when kids are young, they absorb things like sponges, right? So them understanding why dynamic controls and modern controls and classic controls are different will come a lot faster to them than 30-year-old people. It's gonna happen. So, oh man. So yeah, I do think that we shouldn't be so curmudgeon-y about things. I think it is time to change things. That's why I made the suggestion about changes to the Electric Wind Godfist, but the Electric Wind Godfist. But of course, I am not a Tekken player. I'm not part of the Tekken community, so anything I say about Tekken is going to be shot down with the quickness. Because literally 1 year before the cross-up came out, I was like, "What if someone makes a controller with left-right on the right side?" And then they could do electrics super easy. And everyone's like, don't worry, that'll never happen. And you know what? We won't adopt it anyway. Tekken players will reject it. And I was like, but what if it happens? They're like, shut up, James, get out of here. And then a year later, the cross-up came out, and I literally quote retweeted my own tweet. And I was like, uh-huh. And everybody in the Tekken community is like, what do we do? What do we do? When a year ago, I was like, we should think about this now, so that when it happens, we already know how to handle it. And everyone's like, it's not going to be a problem. Dude, like, come on. Dude. And so, like, I'm not in a position that I can make suggestions to Tekken. I don't have an ability to make suggestions for Tekken. But my point being is that I do feel like, trying to move forward and maybe try to get things a little more mainstream to grow things is nice. Again, I've been playing fighting games for 30 plus years now. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of grassroots at this point. Grassroots is obviously important. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we should get rid of grassroots. Grassroots is essential to our community and where everything should absolutely start. Support your locals. Grassroots is super important. My point being is that I feel like the grassroots should be the road to help you get to something bigger than that. And, we should have a situation where our players are making more for the talent that they are putting on display. The amount of skill that these guys are putting on for us, that Angry Bird and Mena RD and Tokido and Kakeru and Angry Bird and Big Bird and Mr. Crimson, etc., like the amount of time and work that they're putting into this, they should be compensated for this. And I'm not talking about like, let's turn them into fucking NBA celebrities where they have more money than they know what to do with. Just make it so that these mofos can live, man. Come on. Like, just make it so that these guys can earn enough, by even placing 12th place at a tournament that's actually worth it for them to travel to that event. Right? If we can get to the point where our prize pool pays down to the top 16 or top 32, like actually enough money so that everybody who's in the money makes more money than they spent being at that event, we're all better off for it. We're all better off for it, right? So that's the thing. So yeah, exactly. The Chilean twins that play MK, when they win Evo, you think they come out of Evo making money? They definitely lost money. They definitely lost money at every tournament they've been to that they've won. And they're doing it for pride. But the thing is, that's the thing, is the more money it gets in there, it's not just about, mainstreaming up fighting games. But I want to live in a world where someone from Pakistan or someone from Peru can go up to the foreign council, consulate or whatever it is that they go to and be like, hi, I need a visa to travel for Evo, and have the person on the other side go, oh shit, good luck. Can you win? Are you going to do good? Instead of, I need to go for Evo. What the hell is an Evo? You may flee our country. No, you can't go. Like, the bigger fighting games get, the more opportunities we have to have people travel, and we get to see people play, and we get to see the kid. We get to see the kid from the Dominican Republic who grew up literally with no money now win over $500,000 for being good at Street Fighter, and able to help his parents move, able to build a training facility for the other Dominican Republic players, and to sponsor Dominican Republic players and fly them out to events and stuff like that. Like, that is a story right there. That is a story to tell, Arslan Ash coming out and being the only Evo 2-time winner for Tekken 7. And really putting Pakistan on the map. David always tells that story that years ago, a friend of his was like, I'm from Pakistan. We're really good at Tekken. And David was like, yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are. And then it turns out that, yeah, they're really fucking good at Tekken. You know? Like, those kind of stories is great, right? And yeah, so everyone needs more offline events. Problem is, who's going to pay for it and run them? Exactly. And that's the thing, right? The more people that watch, the more sponsors we get, the more money that's involved. And, you know, like I said, I always use Inside the NBA on TNT as the perfect example of this. But we can be mainstream without losing our soul. You know, back in the days when it was just like Ernie, Kenny, and Charles, and after a while they added Shaq, like all they do is make memes and make fun of each other, talk smack to each other. I mean, they created that whole going fishing meme where all the players are like, tell Charles and Kenny that I'm not going fishing yet. You know, like that's all they did. And like sometimes they would be showing the replays on screen and they're not even talking about replays, you know, like I love that shit. I think we can do that. Like we can do it our way, right? So yeah, we need ethical money. So again, the reason why I didn't want MLG to take over the fighting game community is because, like Epic dropping Bandcamp, if you rely on your parents to live, they can kick you out of the house. But if you actually slowly build up your career so that you buy your home yourself, no one can kick you out of the house. Which is why the ads are a necessary evil for events like Evo and such like that. I am not looking for a company to come in and be like, all right, fighting game, here we go. We're pumping you up. Fighting game community needs to keep doing it on their own, by themselves. So I need to keep that. I need to make sure people understand that's where I'm coming from. We need to build this up ourselves. We have to. That's what we've been doing. That's how we've been doing it. And it's a slow going process, but we have to start making little bits of concessions here and there while still being able to maintain our personality. And again, as long as Rick the Hado is in charge of Evo, I will have at least the faith that Evo will be able to maintain that, because I trust Rick Thayer very much. I trust what he does. He is all about the community. He loves the community. So as long as Rick Thayer is in charge, I think we're good. That is kind of what I want to do, basically. So I think it'd also be huge if the FGC had something emerge in the vein of an NFL films. I don't know what that is. Do they just like a documentary group that just goes out there and makes documentaries about the NFL? Because, I mean, don't forget, we do have Esteban's stuff, Hold Back to Block. He does a lot of great stuff out there. It's just it doesn't spread as much as it really, really should, honestly, because he has some great stuff out there. Gerald Lee also did a lot of great things when he was doing a lot of his content out there. Reversal.gg is doing a lot of good stuff like that. Yeah. And I think Reversal did do a whole thing with Mena. Evo, we had the whole interview with Mena as well. So there's a lot of good ways. Yeah. No, Mike Ross and Cien are doing a great job with that because, again, man, Mike Ross, I mean, he's just effortlessly appealing. Like he's just somebody. I mean, I know literal people who got into the fighting game community because of Mike Ross, right? Either because they thought he was funny and they wanted to play fighting games, or they thought he was really hot and they're like, holy shit. You mean people like this play fighting games? Okay, I'll play fighting games too. I may have looked at this wrong, you know, like literally. So, we can do it. There's ways that we can do this, right? Yeah, exactly. Most people are willing to put in the work. It's that the work ends up with your bank account at minus 10K. Yep, exactly. So yeah, again, I didn't know Mike Ross before Versus Vortex. He's so funny. Dude, he's so effortlessly charming. He's like, you just see him and it's just like, it's so hard. Charismatic is the phrase that I want. It's so, like, you just can't look at Mike Ross and not just think like, I want to be this guy's best friend. Like, that's why everybody who sees Mike Ross wants to play like, hey, Mike, hey, I love your stuff, man. It's just like, you just want to be his friend, man. Like you do, you know, honestly. So yeah, he oozes charisma even when he's not trying. Yeah, his streams are great without his cam turned on. Absolutely. So, you know, that's just the thing. And so, you know, we can do this. We can do this in the FGC. But we have to be careful about trying to hold on to too many legacy things. I know we've gone completely off topic, but in a way it is kind of the same topic because, trying to leave behind things like the Electric Wind Godfist original, inputs, or, trying to maintain all of the crazy things we learned about Strive through Guilty Gear X, XX, and Exerd, might not be the right way to go. And especially in the age of emulation, where something like Fightcade brings us the ability for a Vampire Savior community to exist and still get new players from people jumping into Fightcade, and a Sailor Moon on the SNES having a resurgence as well. We're living in this era where we don't leave behind video games. We don't have to leave behind video games before. We had to do it before because you couldn't play it anymore. Like, you just couldn't play it anymore. And even with things like MAME, it wasn't accurate. You would get arcade inaccurate things happening, And so now we're in an era where Mister and all these other things are putting in all this work for games preservation. We don't have to maintain legacy because the legacy will always be there for you to play. And again, special shout outs to Arxis for putting rollback netcode into Guilty Gear Exerd. Capcom, Ultra Street Fighter 4 needs rollback. Paging Capcom. Ultra Street Fighter 4 needs rollback. I repeat, Ultra Street Fighter 4 needs rollback. Thank you. Like, seriously, UMVC3 needs... Oh, so UMVC3 is tougher because Marvel, right? Anytime you talk about Marvel versus Capcom, Marvel is there. Like, you can't just... Capcom can't just be like, let's do it. Because they can't. They literally cannot without Marvel going, you may do it now, right? So that's the hard part, honestly. So, yeah, it'd be nice to see Capcom support the legacy games more. I mean, they tried to with a lot of the collections, but the collections, unfortunately, just don't succeed well enough because even if their online netcode is good, it's just Fightcade exists, and Fightcade has more of a community built into it, right? It has the chat built into it. It has the ability for, people to communicate a little bit more, and it's a better hub than what Capcom has. I mean, honestly, if Capcom was smart, they would buy Fightcade, not buy Fightcade, but hire the Fightcade guys to create a Capcom only Fightcade and make it so that they can't play it in Fightcade anymore, which would suck for the Fightcade people. But I mean, they gotta do more than just coming out with the game like that, basically. So. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Capcom keeps making these retro collections, and I keep trying to push them. I'm like, dude, come play Vampires. I mean, I went on Vampire Savior to play ranked, the week that it came out, and then I was like, man, I'm not getting any matches. And someone checked, and they said, hi, on Steam, currently, there are 4 people playing Capcom Collection right now. So you're going to run into one of those 3 guys, or nobody else, It was unfortunate, so... Yeah, exactly. Community can do it because they have infinite time, basically. Yeah, Discord fighting games are a thing. It's got to be a good way to make that better than it is. But in any case, look, the whole point of this is that, we have the ability to grow. We have the ability to change. We can't be stuck on old things. Bringing it back to the Tetris stuff. Do I think we should go to Tetris Effect Connected and play Classic on there? I mean, it is unfair to a lot of people. And then someone would have to, someone could definitely profit from making NES to Xbox or PC adapters. They definitely would make a killing off of that single Tetris scene. But it would allow the Tetris company to be more involved. It would allow Enhance to become involved with the CTWC. It would help it grow. And I feel the same thing, right? Strive did it. Strive is proof that it works. Strive had 2,600 entrants at EVO last year. That's the most out of anything not Street Fighter, right? Like, that's the record right there. And the Street Fighter 5 record of 5,000 players barely counts, because I think most of those entries didn't even end up playing in the tournament. Because after Street Fighter 5 came out, everybody was so disappointed in the game that a lot of people just didn't even end up playing in their tournament. ICTEC Classic is a good ramp for players to at least even try the game without getting an old console and CRT or expensive HDMI scaler right out the gate. Exactly. And that's the thing is, and can you imagine if we moved to that platform? Would it suck? Yeah, but then we wouldn't have to worry about maintaining CRTs or old NESs and all these things. And maybe, with Green Tea's work with Enhance and stuff like that, you can... I mean, I think they have it already, that the versus mode already has same pieces for both players and stuff like that. But, there's just a lot of like cool things that you could do, with direct conversation with the dev that can actually still modify the game, like right there. Like, could you imagine if you're like, hey, can we add a level 39 kill screen? And they'd be like, sure. And then they patch that in there or something like that, because it's worth it for them, because the CTWC's popularity ends up helping them sell more copies of the game. That's an important thing. Strive has opened up a bunch of eyes to Guilty Gear now. So a lot of people played Strive, even if they don't keep playing it, even if they're new to Guilty Gear. Now a lot more people know who's Soul Bad Guy and Kai Kisk and Potemkin and Axel Lowe, and everybody knows who Happy Chaos is now. I mean, it's actually really, really cool. So... Tetris is not a game that really needs a tutorial. I've always said the brilliance of Tetris is that you sit someone down and don't tell them anything, and they put a piece down, and immediately they're like, ooh. Like, they just already kind of know that it's a problem. Now, what they do need is strategy tutorials, right? Yeah, I think that's kind of what you're thinking. So yeah, CTWC is a different thing, because NES Tetris is just absolute, compared to what you're used to with Tetris these days, it's crazy. It's absolute madness, and the rotation rules and all these things like that it's very, very different and stuff like that. So yeah, knowing where to put a well, your basic strategies, things like that. Yeah, exactly. Tetris Effect 99 is a battle royale that does explain. Is that explain why you need one? Dude, Tetris, I don't know what you mean by Tetris Effect 99 doesn't exist. There's only a Tetris Effect Connected and a Tetris 99. And Tetris 99 is the most amazing battle royale game out there. Oh, the F099 tutorial and load screen tips are good. Yeah, really good. In the attract mode, the arcade version of Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, they have a Dan explain everything. Right, yeah, exactly. Obviously, you can put little things like that in there. And shout outs to Street Fighter 6 for having an attract mode. Shout outs to Street Fighter 6 for having an attract mode. Like, I know that means nothing to anybody else out there except the old heads. I fucking love it. I'm so glad they put an attract mode in there. It's so good. I'm so happy, dude. Seriously. Attract mode is a lost art. Yeah, oh yeah, no, that's right. Tetris TGM has a good attract mode explainer. They actually tell a bunch of you how to do things, and they show a lot of the crazy rotations that you can do. So the reason why it's called attract mode, Shaq the Great, it is what shows on an arcade cabinet when no one is playing it. Because all it's doing is designed is to attract your attention and get you to play the game. That is what the attract mode is. When no one is playing it, it just shows stuff. And so it can show instructions or just show really cool graphics, like the intros for Third Strike, or or like the big Ryu in Super Street Fighter 2. It's just there to get you to notice the game and go, what is this? And want to try to play it. Some games will have instructions, etc., etc. So Savage Rain attract mode was godlike because the scream in it was like 5 times louder than every other machine for some reason. That was the trick that they did for Killer Instinct too, which, by the way, was in Hold Black to Block's Killer Instinct documentary, which, if you haven't seen, you should watch. You should watch. So, but I will tell you this right now, almost like 90% of the really, really high level Tetris stuff that I have learned always seem to have been written by a guy named Kitaru. It was weird. Like, I would go and look up like how ST stacking works. It was like by Kitaru. I went to go look up how this, what the difference between DAS and this. It was written by Kitaru. So, there's this dude named Kitaru out there who's like a walking encyclopedia of Tetris out there. And he wrote all this great information on the web out there. So definitely, if you want to find some good information, look for anything written by a Kitaru or an Alex Kerr. But yeah, most 90s attract modes are goated, absolutely. But yeah, like I said, I've gone through so many different topics here, and wow, this is going to be a long episode. I may have to split this up into pieces somehow, but I don't know how, because this is all just one long discussion, to be honest with you. I'll have to think about this. I think it's just going to have to be one really long discussion. But I mean, most of it was all relevant to the conversation. Are legacy skills a little bit overrated at this point? Do we change games to allow new players to jump in here and stuff? Yeah, and as long as that they are designed in a way to be balanced, and as long as they are designed in a way that, hopefully they don't overwrite what other people do, I do think that's important, right? I think that's important to have. So I hate down inputs as well, Forrest, but if they existed since Street Fighter 2, we wouldn't have a problem with them right now. ASCII art joystick diagrams. Yeah, baby. Yep. Kitaro and Jesus and Marion Barry Chain know all about that, dude. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, honestly, Barry, that I respect Kitaru so much, is because all the stuff that he does for Tetris, I mean, is honestly similar to kind of like what I used to do for fighting game FAQs. I just wanted to get that information out there. I did it because I wanted people to know so they could get better and they could get stronger and they could understand these things, in a way that they wouldn't be able to understand without that kind of information out there. And, it really does take a lot of those kind of people. Another one right now is Infilament. He's another one of those guys right now in the FGC who's super, super important out there, who does a lot of those kind of things. I mean, he wrote the entire KI guide just because he wanted more people to understand KI, And that's how it works. That's really how it works. So. Any case, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it on this topic here, because I've basically been talking about an hour and a half. Yeah, a lot of people made money off of my FAQs, SP Patrick, except me. Except me. I know a lot. Dude, someone actually showed me saved PDFs of a Brazilian fighting game magazine that literally published my X-Men versus Street Fighter combo FAQ word for word. Like, they just copy and pasted it into their magazine and sold the magazine, dude. Literally, they just sold it. And I was like, really? Man. I was like, man. Man. Right? Yeah, exactly. Mike Lee says, yeah, that's why there's that rumor that I went to Brazil and beat everyone's ass in X-Men versus Street Fighter. Maybe. Oh, that magazine is gone. Long gone, Forrest. Oh, man. So, yes, I am a published author. Well, yep. A lot of cool things happening in the FGC. I still haven't had a chance to try MK1 yet. I'm trying to wait to see if it ever goes on sale, because I know someone donated money to me and was like, go get MK1. And I was like, all right. And I just haven't had a chance to do that yet. So, yeah, I do think, just TLDR summary kind of situation, closing thoughts. I do think that, we should move on. I think we should be better about be more willing to open up and look past a lot of the things. I mean, just to even go beyond legacy skills like an Electric Wing Godfist or like those FD cancels and stuff like that. Even going beyond that, just overlooking old school fighting game ideas, right? Like actually coming up with different ways to do the stuff that we already do in fighting games, coming up with, thinking about what is outdated. What is the reason we keep doing it this way? Is it because we're stuck in the past, or is it because this is actually the best way to do it? Like, it's great to look differently at it. And when you actually examine Strive as closely as possible, like I have, because I think about this all the time, that's exactly what Daisuke did. Everything he did in Strive, he was like, do we need the corners to be corners? Because remember, he zooms past the corners sometimes, and it is weird. It's confusing because there's no actual wall there, which makes it a little bit weird. But he's like, should I add the counter thing? Should I add slowdown? If I add this crazy counter delay, does that let people option select things? If that lets people option select things, how do I fix that? Oh, I make it so that you can cancel moves during the recovery, which you couldn't do before. But that changes the game completely. But you know what? We'll rock with it. Should I make the combo counter crazy? Should I make the burst meter weird and small and scroll alongside their health? Like he tried a lot of different things, and a lot of it didn't work. A lot of it, people were like, no. And they fixed a lot of things that were not good, like that horrible burst meter, the original burst meter. So, I'm really happy that Daisuke tried to do a lot of different things. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that. Honestly, I don't think he gets enough credit for trying to do a lot of really sick things with the fighting game. So, Shay says making FGs is super risky. It's a genre dominated by existing IPs with long-time legacies. Absolutely. So, which is why, like, dude, I still want to make my Rival Schools game, dude, because I know it won't play anything like old Rival Schools. But there is one facet of the game that I want to flip team games on their head. And I just think it would be so cool. It's just such a neat idea. Oh, God, I wish I could make Rival Schools. I talk to them all the time, dude. I always talk to the translators over there. I was like, please let Nakayama and Matsumoto-san, if they ever make a new Rival Schools game, to talk to me, please. Please, please, please. And he's like, okay, I know. I get it, James. This is the 7th time you've told me this already. Project L is still being made, but remember, Riot won't release a game unless they really, really, really think it's in a state that's worthy to their goals. So they will postpone a game until they think it is absolutely ready. So Project L still going, still being developed, and we're getting more information as we go. We got the most information, and finally it was playable at EVO this last year. But as far as we know, still currently under development, still no release dates announced. So. And that's the thing, is you don't necessarily have to have the development talents, say, SP Patrick. You just have to have the ideas and someone who can implement it for you. I theoretically could. Honestly, if I sat down on Unreal and just really started hammering out like a mock-up of what my Rival Schools idea would be, it would be kind of interesting. It would be kind of fun. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, but again, I think, we are in a position where we can actually, try to do different things. And again, growing the FGC so that it is more mainstream doesn't have to come at the expense of the grassroots, right? As long as a lot of the same guys, like the old heads like me, can pass down the mentality of fighting games. And, some things that are old school, I don't think we should lose. I never want the FGC to become a worship community where we only worship the top players. I always want it to be so that the top players have to start at the beginning of the bracket like everybody else, that everybody has a chance. I want open tournament brackets. Yes, we can have more invitationals, but the open brackets like EVO are always going to be the most important thing. I want the locals to be where people start. I want the community to run most things. I don't want a situation where a company creates a game, lets the community run a bunch of stuff, and then build up the audience, and then buys out the community, and then takes control of everything. Not that I'm saying that that's ever happened or anything, but I want to have the SGC always be a kind of community that is run by the fans of it. That the games are out. The games exist to benefit the communities out there. And then open it up to be something bigger. Because you know what? Basketball is a multi-million-dollar sport, and that doesn't stop everybody from going to the courts and shooting hoops, man. And you know what? Yeah, maybe it's not the NBA, but, maybe eventually you travel to New York and you play at Rucker Park or something like that. Or, you play, like you get on the viral videos of playing, street ball with other people and stuff. Like there's a lot of different paths that you can go, but it's always going to be the community that keeps playing it, right? And, that's the goal right there, is that you make the sport popular so that people everywhere can benefit from it, honestly. So, any case, I think that's all I have for this topic here. All I have 2 hours later for this topic here. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the chat. Hopefully you did find this discussion very, very interesting. And I hope you guys do enjoy this kind of podcast-like content, where I just talk like this. I may split this up into 2 videos and do 2 parts. I know that's not very popular, but we'll see how it goes, because I do need to have content for multiple days and stuff like that. So it's just the nature of YouTube content. You need to have content like constantly, and that's just how it works. So we'll see how this goes. But in any case, hope you guys really enjoyed this kind of discussion. Hope you guys like this. Like King J said, we need more FGC podcasts out there. Let people know about this one, and let people know that the conversations have been very interesting, and it's a fun kind of discussion, and that I try my best to present arguments from all sides and be very, very open to discussion, and try to approach things from a much older, mature standpoint, as well as someone who has been around the block. Guitar says, very good general stream. I say keep the VOD solid if you can. Some people really like the long stream format. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right, cool. Thank you guys for tuning in. I mean, for those of you who are here on Twitch, don't go anywhere. But for those of you on YouTube, thank you guys for watching. Like I said, let me know your thoughts on everything that's been going on that I've been talking about over here. And never forget that the day that this podcast graced your ears was the most important day of your life. But for me,
it was Tuesday.